as you can see from this, a co-op needs your time and energy to function. This is really a cornerstone of cooperative living and particularly of limited equity housing co-ops. There are three important reasons why co-ops absolutely need the members to participate and be involved. And the first one is control. Again, as I said earlier, control is very important in terms of being part of a co-op. You are the owner and you are in control of your housing, and you're working with a whole group of people to make this project viable. And if you don't participate, then you have no control. And we have seen some co-ops where the members have gotten a little bit lazy, if you don't mind me saying so myself, where they have hired like a manager to do a lot of the work, and they've kind of stopped paying attention to what's going on. And if you don't know what's going on in your co-op, then you really don't have control. You don't know what money is being spent on. You don't know who's being paid for what. You don't have any control over who's moving in if you're not involved in taking those applications and being involved on a committee to screen applicants. If you are not paying attention and are not involved, then you're not going to have control. So it's very important for residents to be involved in order to stay in charge of your housing. The second reason is very related to control, and that is transparency. Again, if you don't know what's going on, you're not going to be able to run your housing and be in charge of it. Transparency is such a cornerstone of cooperative living, in just having the financial records be disclosed to everyone. Everyone in the co-op gets a copy of the budget and of what's being spent and how the money is being used, how much money you have in your bank accounts, what you're putting into reserves, what you're paying for insurance, what you're paying for contractors to do work. It's very important for the co-op to be transparent to its members. But if the members are not involved, then there's no way that there's going to be transparency. You're not going to know what's going on. And a lot of things are going to start happening that you may not be comfortable with, but you're not going to know about it because you're not involved and you're not paying attention. The third reason that participation is so important is that it lowers your housing cost and helps keep the co-op affordable to lower income people. And it's a very important goal of co-op housing to be affordable to as many people and as affordable at as low of an income as possible, so that more people can have the opportunity of being homeowners. People like myself who are working class people and lower income people who have never had the opportunity to own a home, and otherwise, without being able to live in a co-op, would really never have the financial resources to go out and buy a home or condo on the at a market rate. So keeping the co-op affordable is very, very important. It's central to the co-op's mission. But having people participate and do some of the work of managing and running the co-op makes the co-op a lot more affordable, keeps your costs down. It stands to reason that every hour that you put in doing work in the co-op, whether that's the bookkeeping or the gardening or handling maintenance or taking bids for contractors to do work, whether it's screening applicants who want to move in, any of those tasks, every hour of work that you put in, that's an hour of work that the co-op is not going to have to pay someone else to do. So it's going to continue to lower your housing costs. Now, having said how important member participation is, it may seem contradictory that the paradox of it is that every co-op we have ever worked with has had the complaint that not enough members do the work, not enough members get involved, and that some of the members that do the work then end up getting burned out and want to quit because they're doing too much work. So it's a chronic problem in every co-op that we have ever worked with, that people are not enough people are putting in enough time and energy to make the co-op work. And I'm going to ask you the question of, why do you think that is? What do you think are the reasons as to why people are not doing their part.
Well, people have other things that they want to do.
Exactly.
People are thinking about something that might be better somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
If they're really satisfied getting their needs met in the co-op, then they will be engaged.
If they're satisfied with the co-op, then what?
They'll be engaged in doing what it takes to make it work.
Certainly, sometimes that's true. Sometimes it seems to work the opposite way, that they're satisfied, they're happy with the co-op, and they think everything's fine, so I don't have to do anything. So sometimes that it works the opposite way. There is also the fact that most of us who live in co-ops have spent our entire lives being low-income tenants, and so we always have had the belief that our housing is someone else's responsibility, because when you are a tenant, you can't really take responsibility for your housing because the landlord is in control of things and they're not going to let you do anything. So it's kind of a shift in the mindset for most of us when we do move into a co-op. It often takes a few years to realize, wow, wait a minute, it's not someone else's job to take care of things anymore, because I'm not a tenant now. I own the place. I'm an owner in this building, and I have to take responsibility. So it's natural that if all of our lives we're used to one kind of setup, suddenly we're in a different setup, it can take a while to make that shift of the mindset from having the mindset of being a tenant and saying if something's wrong, call the landlord to take care of it, to saying, wow, I'm an owner here and I have to take responsibility for it. Yes?
I was a member of a homeowners association, and one of the things that I came out with is the fact that everybody is nuts.
Everybody's what?
Nuts, crazy.
Oh.
When it comes to their own home. And once you own that, it's mine and I want it done this way. And it's very hard to get a cooperative situation out of that because of the ownership part. It's my home.
That people can be very rigid about their homes and what they want, and it's hard for them to be in a cooperative mindset to try to work with the whole group to do what's right, do what's best for the whole group. That's very true. So, but I think you mentioned that people have other things to do, and that is the key reason that most people do not get as involved as we would like them to be. Here in the modern world, we have very busy lives. People are working long hours, commuting long distances to work. People have children to take care of, elderly relatives to take care of, or people are going to school to further their education. People are doing a lot of political activism work that takes up their time. And so there's a lot of reasons why people just don't have a lot of free time, and it's hard for them to prioritize really putting in the time and effort. There also is another problem that sometimes comes up, and that is that a lot of times when people move into a co-op, they don't believe that they have the skill set needed to help in a co-op. They don't feel like they have any valuable skills in order to do the work in a co-op. So it's very important for the co-op to try to orient people and train them to do the tasks that are involved in a co-op. Sometimes the tasks do not take any specialized skills. I mean, sometimes it's a matter of, pulling weeds out in the front yard that probably does not require a lot of training. And some people are involved in doing things like organizing social events and potlucks. That's a very valuable thing to do in a co-op, to help build community by organizing social events. And that is something that a lot of people have that skill already. Some people also have property management skills or have worked in various kinds of property management situations, and they can help by taking bids for the contracting work that needs to be done, or doing the research on the internet to find the best possible plumber or the best possible roofer or whatever else is needed in the co-op. So there are a lot of reasons why people don't tend to get involved, and it's very important if you are thinking of moving into a co-op to really assess whether really co-op living is for you. And I'm going to move into that right now, actually, and talk about, people often call us at the Land Trust and say, well, I think I'd like to live in a co-op. Do you think a co-op is right for me, or do you think I would be happy living in a co-op? And I always tell them to ask themselves these 3 questions and to be brutally honest with yourself about the answers. The first question is, do you want to pay a lot less for your housing, but do more work and take more responsibility for your housing? And if you are someone who would just as soon pay more money but not have to do any work or have the responsibility, then you're probably not an ideal candidate for moving into a co-op. If you said yes to that question and said, I'd love to pay a lot less money for my housing, and I'm willing to do more work and take more responsibility, then ask yourself the second question, which again I would ask you to be very, very honest with yourself. The question is, looking at your current commitments and responsibilities that you already have in your life, do you have the time and energy available to put in several hours every month in your co-op? Several hours of work every month, all year long, every year from now on, as long as you live in that co-op. And if you can't answer yes to that question, then you're probably not an ideal candidate for living in a co-op, because you're going to be under a lot of pressure to put in the time and work, and you're not really going to have that time and energy available to you. We often find that people like the idea of co-op living, but that it's hard for them to predict whether they're actually going to be able to live up to the expectation of putting in the time. Now, every co-op is different. Our co-op, for instance, we require 12 hours a month of labor. And most people don't actually end up putting in quite that much, but it does mean that every month you have to set aside several hours to really put in the time and work. Most co-ops, it's much less, more like 2 or 3 hours a month. For our co-op, it's 2 hours a month for a co-op meeting, and a couple hours a month to be an officer of the co-op, either president, secretary, vice president, or treasurer, or maintenance coordinator, and several hours to do maintenance tasks, primarily gardening and landscaping tasks, because we have a lot of outdoor space. Most other co-ops, it's only a few hours a month, but even that, it seems that people really have a hard time really consistently really delivering on that expectation. And as I said, people are very, very busy, and I usually tell people to really look at what your commitments are right now, and some people actually have looked at the situation and said, right now I really can't do it because I've got small kids at home, or I've got a lot of responsibilities at work right now and I'm going to have that for a while, or I'm trying to go to college or grad school or something. But a couple years from now, perhaps I'll be a much better candidate for the co-op, because a couple years from now my kids will be bigger and they won't need me quite as much, or a couple years from now I'll be farther along in my career and I won't need to put in these 12-hour days. And so for some people, right now is not the appropriate time in their life for co-op living, but at some point in the near future they might be right for it. The third and probably an even more important question to ask yourself if you are interested in living in a co-op is, how do you view your housing in relationship to your financial future? The reason this question is so important is that if you move into a limited equity housing co-op, when you move out of that co-op, you are going to walk away with a much smaller pile of cash than if you bought a single-family home or a condo. So if you are seeing your housing and buying into a home as a means for accumulating a nest egg for your retirement, or accumulating money for later on for some other financial goals, then a co-op is probably not the right investment for you, because it's not going to help you reach that goal. Because if you buy into a co-op, you're going to sell that share 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, and you will get back the down payment you put in plus a small increase per year that you live there. Whereas if you bought a single-family home or a condo, you would probably end up with a much bigger profit when you sell. So that's a very important question to ask yourself. Does living in a co-op help you meet the financial goals that you were trying to set by buying a home in the first place? The reality is, for most of us who live in co-ops, we could never afford to buy a home or condo on the market anyway, so that's not really an option. But if it is an option, if you have the resources financially to buy a home or a condo, you may find that that's a more appropriate investment for you financially.